Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'd like to reconvene an open session. We'll begin with commissioners' reports and comments. Vice President Baker, would you begin?
I have nothing today.
Okay. Commissioner Kiefer, would you begin?
Yes, just a few things here. One, I'd like to thank our staff from the GIS department and DES. Last week they met in Hancock, and I know they've met in other communities to discuss the 911 address change. I think there were quite a few people that came out asking questions, and thank you all, if you're here, for meeting with the public on those issues. I've mentioned before, I'd like to mention again and see if maybe from time to time we could meet with we have more than 30 boards and commissions that we appoint. Those boards mainly serve in an advisory capacity, and I just don't think we hear from them enough on some issues, and I think maybe we could be a little more proactive in seeking their input on issues or learning what they're discussing. I know those minutes are made available to us, but I think it would be a nice way to interact with those members that we appoint to our different boards and commissions. And then just a request, I know we're shorthanded a little bit in our county administrator's office with the county administrator position being vacant. I think the executive assistant position is vacant, and we have another employee out on leave for a short period of time. But out of 9 staff members that we have working between the county attorney, county administrator office, I know when I was in here yesterday for a period of time, quite a while, there was only 1 staff member present, and that was Krista, and there was some people coming in and out asking questions. I had a few questions, so if we could just maybe be conscious of not everyone leaving at the same time, so citizens' questions and commissioner questions could be answered when we're in, I would appreciate it. So that's all I have.
Commissioner Monmouth-Smith?
Got a couple bills that I would like us to oppose and one to support. One today at 1 o'clock is the mobile home tax bill that was part of our agenda. That's House Bill 1161, taking the mobile homes being taxed as property. So I'd like to, if we could get a vote to support that, to send down to Annapolis today.
Court, how will that affect on what the commissioners voted on last week?
I would hope if this passes that we would be repealing that tax.
And,
Would they have additional or higher taxes with this?
and the fees that we agreed to last week,
Would be repealed. I would 100%, I would vote to repeal that, what we agreed last week, if this mobile home tax gets passed.
But your question is, will they be paying any more?
correct.
That depends on what the assessed value.
Well, it's going to depend on what the assessed value. If somebody has a $70,000 mobile home, then yes, they'd pay more. If somebody has a $10,000 mobile home, they'd pay less. And in this scenario, if they had a $23,999 mobile home, they would pay less if it's assessed value.
I would support this bill. Was this something that we had requested?
Yes, this was the bill
Our-
that we requested.
Okay. Commissioners, consensus to support, letter of support?
Do we need a motion?
Well, how about the delegation?
The delegation, put this in as a delegation bill.
Okay, and all the delegation members are in support of it?
Correct.
All right, vote motion.
I make the motion to support House Bill 1161.
There's a first, is there a
Second.
second? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And there's 2 other bills. One, House Bill 1628. It's the service tax. I'm sure everyone's heard that. It's to lower the sales tax from 6% to 5%, and then basically add a 5% sales tax. This is $2.9 billion tax increase, and I would like us to oppose that.
Okay, you have a request for
I-
a vote to oppose.
I would make the motion. Make a motion to oppose House Bill 1628.
There's a first, is there a second?
Second.
I have first and a second to oppose House Bill 1628. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's for a letter.
And then there's another one, it's House Bill 1494 and Senate Bill 1040. This is to increase the income tax cap to the counties to 3.5% and to be able to set brackets. I'd like us to oppose that bill.
Any discussion for, there's a motion?
Can we ask them to lower it to what it is right now?
Good luck.
I'll make the motion to support that.
Okay, is there-
Propose.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor to support the motion to oppose, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Wagner?
Morning. Attended the State of the City this morning, as usual. Chamber did a nice job. The council members all had good things to say. It was pretty informative. Nothing we haven't heard before, but it's it's basically a lot of it revolved around the opioid crisis and the drug abuse situation. With that being said, I'm the ex officio on the newly formed Health Advisory Board. I'm going to request that they give an opinion to the commissioners on anything they can to do with, it's a very good board. It's chaired by Michael Reka. Give advice, what they're supposed to do, advisory board to the commissioners on the whole realm of the drug situation and Washington County, including the needle exchange, and see what their thoughts are. We haven't fielded those directly from the advisory board yet, but I think that'll be coming. I heard a presentation the other day with Health Department, Earl Stoner. And then I got a question for Dave, since you're right there. I know we're not supposed to. I've been asked several things. What's our strategy for the coronavirus if it happens to start? You're going to address that today. I'll tell you in about 3 minutes. Thank you, sir. That's all.
I forgot. Tomorrow, if anybody wants to come down to Annapolis, it's always exciting. 1 o'clock is our Medicaid bills, the 1496 and 1485. That's the committee meeting at the Health and Government Office Committee. I can't remember the name of it, HGO. But so that's tomorrow, and I know we have a lot of support from Washington County with our emergency services, and we have other counties. Carroll County is going to come down and also support this. We have so hopefully we can get something for our EMS services.
Thank you. I also attended part of the state of the county, had to leave for some phone calls, but I was there to see 2 important projects that the county and the city have worked collaboratively on, from the UIP project to the North Point project. As colleagues together, those 2 important projects are going to bear fruit and be productive for our community. I also attended the grand opening of Ingram's Men's Shop. I think they said they've been together for over 90 years. It's a small local business, small family. And as Ingram's was beginning to close, I think some younger family members stepped up and took over the business. So they had their grand opening yesterday. And Saturday, I did attend an FFA breakfast for Clear Spring and Boonesboro down to Benevola Church. That was well attended. And there was a lot of kids down there wearing those blue jackets representing the FFA. And for a little commercial announcement, the home show is this weekend out at HCC, Saturday and Sunday. So I would encourage everyone to stop out there and attend the Home Builder Show. That concludes my reports. Next, we would have reports from county staff. County staff, please come forward. State your name and your matter, please.
Good morning, Rachel Brown, Human Resources Director. And I'm requesting an official vote for hiring for a position, the Superintendent of Landfill Operations and Environmental Management Solid Waste Department. This is a grade 15 step 1 position with an annual salary of $59,634. It's vacant due to the retirement of Kathy Mills. It's a full-time budgeted position. We advertised both internally and externally. We received 23 applicants with 9 interviews being conducted. 3 were internal and 6 were external. And we recommend Donald Morgan to fill the position.
Commissioner, thoughts, comments? Motion for approval.
Make motion.
I have first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Also requesting an official vote on hiring for the Deputy Director of Planning and Zoning in the Planning and Zoning Division. This is a grade 16, step 13 position with an annual salary of $86,590. This is due to the promotion of Jill Baker to Planning and Zoning Director. It's a full-time budgeted position. We advertised both internally and externally. There was 1 applicant, and that was an internal interview. And we recommend Jennifer Kinzer to the position of Deputy Director, Planning and Zoning.
Commissioners, comments?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Approved. Any other staff would like to come forward? please introduce your colleague, and you may begin.
David Hayes, Director of Emergency Services.
David Chisholm, Assistant Director of Emergency Medical Services.
Commissioners, we're here this morning just to give you, ironically, an update on the emergency services planning and activities relative to what is well known in the nation as coronavirus, or COVID-19. Up until this point, there are no documented cases in the state of Maryland, so that's a good thing for us. It allows us the ample time to plan, but currently our process is to make sure that our first responder community has the appropriate personal protective equipment to go out and continue to serve the citizens each and every day, even in the face of something like this. This is very similar to the influenza flu that we experience each year. It's different, but it does have similar characteristics, and the precautions are very much similar. So as you've heard from the CDC, continue to wash your hands regularly and keep your body distance where you can. But for the emergency services, we've conducted an inventory of the N95 mask, and for those that may not know what that is, it's a one-time use mask that filters out at least 95% of the particulate matters. It is certified for use in this type of virus exposure, and what we found is we have variable degrees of mask, meaning manufacturers and models. What we know is OSHA requires an annual fit test to the exact mask that a responder would be using at the time of exposure. So we have found that that's going to be something that's difficult to manage, the compliance with that fit testing. So we have ordered and have partial receipt of 2,000 N95 masks. We spent many hours trying to find those. That using the word challenging in the distribution and acquisition of those masks is probably an understatement, because everybody's buying them, but most are buying them for the wrong reasons. They're more indicated for the healthcare profession and the first responder world. They're designed to protect us from somebody that's contaminated. We've received a shipment yesterday of 650 of those. We're waiting on an additional 1,350. 1,000 of those masks will be allocated to the Washington County Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Mullendore is in the audience behind me. We made sure that while we were purchasing, we thought about his agency and the task that he would have in dealing with not only the patrol officers, but his jail, his incarceration facility. We also are going to support a countywide approach to this. Our plan currently is to issue individual isolation kits that will have a gown, leg covers, glasses, and an N95 mask that we know the certification date is in place, and assign this to each of the volunteer and career responders in the county. We're encouraging a single approach to this, which will allow us to ensure that the appropriate PPE is out there and that the person has been properly fit tested before they receive an exposure. We've ordered 6 N95 qualitative fit testing kits to make sure that we have the ability to saturate the county with tests, so that the volunteer community specifically will have a reasonable opportunity to become and maintain compliance with that. They're expected to be delivered today or tomorrow as well. From that point, once we have the supplies in hand, we're going to institute an aggressive fit testing schedule with an intent to have the 100% completion of the responder community tested to these masks in 7 days. So that's pretty aggressive. It'd be a hard task, but we're going to set a deadline, and that's the deadline we're going to work to. We're working through continuity of service planning for our fire, EMS, and law enforcement partners. We have a meeting tomorrow with the health department, the local health officer. From a public side of this thing, this is a health officer, health department effort, meaning they'll be the coordinating agency for that. And as far as hand sanitizers, we've ordered those. They're going to be placed throughout the Division of Emergency Services Administrative Complex. And then we've also placed individual hand sanitizers at each of the 12 911 center consoles, so that the dispatchers have hand sanitizer readily available to them. And again, all of this is geared at protecting our workforce, first and foremost for their own health and safety, but also to help ensure continuity of service and operations for the 911 center. The last thing, I've talked to the county administrator and the president and the commissioners this morning and yesterday. We're going to be asking the county administrator to appoint a county government task force to work on continuity of operation planning for county staff in the event we have some type of exposure or suspected exposure in any county department. We have continuity of operations plan documents, so we'll probably use those as base templates and look to expand them or modify them relative to the coronavirus itself. And in closing, really what I want to reiterate is now's not the time for panic, but it is the time for planning and preparation. So our message to the commissioners is we're working hard. We intend to launch a public relations campaign with this information so that the public understands we're working hard to make sure that we can still come and respond to your emergency, whether it's somebody that has flu-like symptoms or is having a heart attack or has some type of injury. We're still going to be prepared to deal with that. So that's where we are. I don't know if Director Chisholm has anything to add. He'll be leading the internal effort for the division relative to the fire EMS community. We'll be working with the Volunteer Association, the Hagerstown Fire Department, and the health office to make sure that we've covered as many bases as we can in front of this thing. So unless you've got questions of me, that really concludes my staff report.
Just a quick question for either Dave. I see Dr. Michael sit in the audience, and certainly not to put him on the spot in any way, but I hope we're in communication with the Board of Education. I understand their own body in a sense, but if we could help them in any way, supply them or get them training or whatever might be necessary. I know students, that's a mass of people too.
Absolutely. And
Concerned
I know that
probably in the
school board-
vulnerable group too.
Yeah,
For
they are actively engaged in their planning efforts, and I don't want to speak for Dr. Michaels, and likewise, tomorrow's meeting at the health department, we have a meeting that the health officer has called tomorrow morning at 8:30 at the health office. So I know the school board is part of the invitation list for that. And we'll be looking to unify the community and try to come up with as collective of an approach to this so that we don't have every agency doing their own things. To the extent possible, there may be some scenarios where that is not something that is the most practical application, but where we can create similar or like approaches, that's going to be best for not only the county, but also the citizens.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I've spoken to Dr. Michaels, and I've spoken to you several times. And again, today, Earl Stoner, Director of Health Department, has confirmed he is contacting, they have daily, maybe twice, 3 times daily briefings, phone interviews from the state, keeping up on this. And I think you make good comments that if one section of our staff or a school gets it, what's the contingency and planning for that? So we have people in place already making those arrangements.
Right.
Would you not say?
Right. And now's the time to be planning for that before we end up having the first case in Maryland.
Commissioners, any other
Least
questions to
documented
Dave and Dave? All right, hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any other staff comments? Please come forward. State your name and the matter. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rich Eichelberger, Director of Construction. Just wanted to inform you that the county's been contacted by the Insurance Service Office, which is ISO. Most people know them as ISO. The county's audited every 5 years concerning building permits, codes that are enforced and whatnot. So we've been contacted. There's quite a lengthy questionnaire that needs to be filled out, a lot of information. It actually crosses over to plan review and permitting as far as how the county addresses the FEMA floodplains and construction that's allowed, not allowed in those areas. Also the number of inspections that you do, the number of permits that you do. They take all this information, they compile it, and they basically grade the county on how well they've done. It's split in 2 different categories, residential and commercial. And then once they've compiled all their information, graded everything, they share this information with the insurance companies. The insurance companies use this information as part of their evaluation of setting rates for the county citizens for their homeowners insurances and things of that nature. So it's very important that we get this information completed and on time. And again, staff's been working on it pretty rigorously over the last about a week and a half or so. We expect to have a meeting with them later on this month. They're supposed to reach out to us and contact us. Kirk's aware of all this. Again, we get audited about every 5 years. The last time we were audited 5 years ago, we did very well. We've done very well in the past, so I wouldn't expect anything to be any different. Sometimes the numbers go up or down just very slightly. So again, I look for that to happen very soon, and we'll keep everyone updated on how that goes. Also, to piggyback on Commissioner or President Klein's comment about the home show, we, in construction, in conjunction with the engineering staff, plan review, permitting, planning and zoning, environmental health, and public relations, will be manning a booth there for the entire weekend. So we invite the public to come out and talk to us, ask questions that they may have, whatever. And like I said, we'll be there Saturday. It's from 9 to 5, Sunday 10 to 4. So, okay. Any questions?
Questions? Any other staff? Please come forward, introduce yourself in the matter.
Good morning, Susan Buchanan, Director, Office of Grant Management, here this morning to announce a recent hotel rental tax award that has been approved through my office. $3,000 has been awarded to the 9th Annual Maryland International Film Festival in Hagerstown. This year, the event will be on March 27th through 29th and will be held entirely in venues in downtown Hagerstown. The event has historically been supported by the Hotel Rental Tax Grant Fund and generates significant impact to the local community. Any questions or comments on this? Is just for information only.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other county staff would like to come forward? Okay.
Sure. Last week I mentioned that Delegate Quarterman had requested support for House Bill 1367, which is a bill requiring a study as to the feasibility of a MARC rail extension to Western Maryland. You had asked for further information on the bill. I believe it was a copy of the bill was sent to you. Basically, what this bill does is takes funds from the Transportation Trust Fund to perform this study as to the feasibility of extending MARC service to Western Maryland. That, I would note that it is sponsored by a number of legislators, including locally Delegates Parrott, Wyville, and Quarterman.
You're looking for a vote of support?
Yes, he's looking for a letter of support.
Commissioners, motion to agree to the letter of support?
I'll make a motion to support the letter.
I'll second it.
All right, first and second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the letter, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Thank you.
I have two brief items. One is a response to Commissioner Baker's request last week related to the 911 center renovation that's included in the capital budget. He had asked what would be the cost to, or for staff to look into possibly not doing that renovation and maybe including it in the public safety training facility that was currently being built. So staff, including the IT director, emergency services director, myself, and a couple of other directors met related to the issue. And we wanted to report back that adding additional space to the public safety training facility for a 911 center would increase the cost of the construction alone by approximately $4 million. In addition to that cost, it is anticipated that the radio infrastructure that would be necessary for a 911 center would increase costs further. What would need to be included would be a new shelter, a new tower, all communication components, like redirecting antennas to the new site, line of sight analysis, and some other studies related to elevation. And that the estimated cost for this radio infrastructure would probably increase the cost to about 10 million to put that center out
The new training center.
at the new training center. So at this time, staff would be recommending not to.
Was there, pardon me for an interruption,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me. Is there any current plans to move there in the imminent future? Is this just something that's long range?
I think and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, the tentative plan may be to put another building out on that same land for 911 center use in the future
Elliott Parkway or,
on Sharpsburg Pike at the training center. But that would be a 15 to 20 year plan down the road. This intermediary renovation that's programmed for 2027 should meet the needs of the division for 10 to 15 years. And then after that, they may look to approximately 1.8 million, 300,000 I think is state grant. And so the remaining local cost is about 1.5 million. And then I just have one other item. Our office was requested to pay for a sponsorship out of the commissioner contingency. So I wanted to bring that before the board for consideration for a consensus before doing so. It would be for the Shades of Age Expo that is going to be held on Thursday, August 27th, 2020, for the Commission on Aging, and it would be for an amount of $2,000.
And we paid this last year.
That is correct. We did support this last year.
I'll make a motion to support.
I'll second.
second discussion. We did do it last year, and I think we've done it in some form or manner in the past too. And the justification for it is promoting county government and services, right? There's a qualifier for it, so it's just not a stand.
It will promote county government. The logo is to be placed on TV in the Commission of Aging lobby, and marketing materials giveaways to be placed in 350 bags for attendees.
I attended last year, and our PR department did a good job. I don't know if they're in the audience, but they're listening, I'm sure, explaining some county services that would be relevant to senior citizens and some activities that we have going on.
That's a good justification.
Very nice.
All right, I have first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. County staff, Krista?
I have several boards and commissions requesting appointment. I have the Washington County Recreation and Parks Advisory Board. They are requesting to appoint Julie Sanders for the first 3-year term through February 28th of 2023.
Commissioners?
A motion to approve.
Second.
First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
I have the Hagerstown Regional Airport Advisory Commission requesting to appoint George Stone to serve an unfulfilled term through September 30th of 2020, and to appoint Samuel Cole to serve a first 3-year term through February 28th of 2023.
Commissioners, motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, first and a second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
And finally, the Washington County Commission for Women requesting to appoint Shade Paul to serve a first term through February 28th of 2023.
Commissioners, motion? Motion approved. Second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Before we begin, any other staff that I left out or forgot? Seeing none, we'll begin with citizens' participation. Please come forward from the first row, starting with the first row. Name and address, please, and please keep your comments to as close as 3 minutes. We won't cut you off at 4, but be respectful of the remaining of the agenda. Dr. Michaels, welcome, sir.
Morning, President Klein and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Boyd Michael, Superintendent of Washington County Public Schools. Our offices are located at 10435 Downsville Pike. Study after study identifies effective teachers as the most important factor. Effective teachers as the most important factor contributing to student achievement. Additionally, leadership is second only to classroom instruction, among factors that are school-related that can contribute to students' learning at school. Both teachers and leaders are critical in preparing our students for the 21st century workforce, certainly something I think the county commissioners are interested in. Their influence is more powerful than student socioeconomic status, more powerful than child's previous academic achievement, more powerful than the parental involvement that the child may have from home, or even a child's home life. So the influence of an effective teacher and effective leader are far more powerful than what a child comes from or who they are when they enter the door. Effective teachers and leaders can overcome and transcend many of these barriers that stand in the way of a child's success. The nation's in the midst of a crisis, and I know there's a lot of discussion about Kerwin and everything else, but I think many, many people are missing the biggest crisis that's facing their country, and that's the shortage of teachers and highly qualified leaders. Washington County is no exception. The demands for the profession are growing. Educators are increasingly serving as counselors, psychologists, social workers, nurses. They're even stepping up to be the parents for many of our children. They're challenged with meeting the needs of a wide variety of learners. They are confronted with difficult behaviors. They are expected to meet high expectations from families, all the while with limited resources. Pennsylvania has a reputation for exporting teachers, and a good portion of our teachers in Washington County drive south of the Mason-Dixon line to come to work. But over the last decade, there's been a significant shift. Pennsylvania issued 14,000 teaching licenses in 2009, so about 10 years ago. However, during the 2016-17 school year, that number dropped to about 4,000 licensed teachers. This reduction of almost 10,000 licensed teachers is a national trend, so it's not just happening in Pennsylvania or Maryland or Delaware, it's happening across the country, and it's having a cumulative effect on our applicant pool. This is a very serious crisis that people are not paying attention to. Last year, our school system invested initial Kerwin funding in our teachers and implemented raises to recruit and retain the best and brightest educators. This school year, we have the highest starting salary in the state of Maryland, just over $55,000. That's correct. We have the highest starting salary. In cooperation with the Teachers Association, we worked out, I think, a very smart strategy to secure the highest starting salary in the state of Maryland. We also increased the pay scale across the board by 3.8%. Again, I credit the Teachers Union for working with us on that. I can tell you already, though, this was a significant initiative, but not enough. From the applicant pool we are seeing, it's not enough to attract the quantity and quality of teachers and leaders that we need to meet the needs of our students. Even with our recent increases, we live in a region where teachers and leaders don't have to drive far to find better salaries and benefits. We have to remain competitive, and we do that by providing reasonable increases in salaries and benefits throughout the scale. In this competitive market, we have to continue to do this year after year, because other counties are going to do the same as this teacher shortage grows. At last week's meeting of the County Commissioners, I understand you discussed a preliminary salary enhancement to deserving county employees. I heard discussion about a step, which I think is 2.5%, and the potential of a 1% cost of living increase for a total of 3.5%. While negotiations with Washington County Public School employees groups are ongoing, budget enhancements for all employee groups are less than what's been discussed for county employees. And we have the teacher and administrator crisis. I submit to you that our funding request by the Board of Education, at the direction of the Board of Education, to the county was intentionally fiscally conservative and in no way enough to overcome this crisis of a very real teacher and administrative shortage. Mr. Klein, you were able to join us at our most recent celebration of the educational support personnel, our ESP staff. We had five finalists vying for the title of ESP of the Year. It was clear that each of these employees was driven by passion for his or her profession and passion for positively impacting the lives of students. All of our staff, ESP, teachers, administrators, contribute to the success of our students and the economic vitality of your community, and all are deserving of salary enhancements. As I end today, I want each of us just to take a minute and reflect. I bet each of you, and including everyone in the audience, can remember at least one teacher if not many teachers, that made a lasting impression upon your life? Mr. Baker, I know I've heard you tell stories about teachers that you've had that shaped your life, and Mr. Kiefer, I've heard you share the same.
That's what I was asking him. Were you his teacher?
He was my principal.
Principal at the
for the
time. I don't know
record-
if I had a lasting effect or not.
And
I
for the
don't know.
record, my mom was a dishwasher and a cook, and she was proud of her job.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So as we think about these people, maybe they had a significant role in who you are today. Whether you're in the audience, whether you're listening, or with the county commissioner. Maybe some of these teachers helped you to get to where you are today based on their influence. Maybe they helped you determine the profession that you chose. Maybe in some way they helped shape your character. I know that I can provide a long list of teachers who had a lasting impression upon my life. I could start rattling them off from my experience at Boonesboro Elementary, middle, and high, even in college. Effective teachers change the lives of children forever. Let me say that again. Effective teachers change the lives of children forever. My goal is to provide life-changing teachers for generations to come. And we can do that with your support of the Board of Education's budget. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll continue with citizens' participation. Anyone else in the front row, please come forward, name and address, and please keep your comments close to 3 minutes. We won't take you away, but thank you.
My name is Kevin Spielman. My comment is concerning what is coming up next on your agenda. That being the Funkstown Trailer Park. I now live in Hagerstown, Potomac Towers, but I used to live in Funkstown. I was born and raised there. The trailer park has been in deteriorating condition for years. I had numerous friends who lived there in the 1970s, and it looks nothing like it did then. Like I said, although I don't live there, I have numerous family members who do, and they agree it looks deplorable. The owner says she has cleaned it up, the trustee or whoever, and made improvements. I have seen none. The trailers are falling to pieces. It looks like a slum more, and that's the first thing you see when you enter Funkstown. Lady Bird Johnson said the same thing about Elwood Brim's junkyard. And the state highway planted trees to hide it. So what Mayor Crampton's trying to do to the trailer park and make it a park is a good idea. Thumbs up to Mayor Crampton. And to you, Mr. Klein, I don't know if you remember me, but we cleaned up the stream over in Williamsport years ago. So that's what Mayor Klein, Mayor Crampton, is trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other citizens in the front row, please come forward, name and address, and keep your comments close to 3 minutes, but we won't go yet, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. Craig Marley, 16834 Bucklance Road, Sevillersville, Maryland. Just two things, actually. One came up. The gentleman working with the masks mentioned the N95 masks, and might be worth pointing out. I don't know how they disseminate their information, website, whatever, but if it isn't N95 or above, it's pretty much pointless. I know that they're aware of that. I just don't know how they disseminate their information, but at any rate. Number two, it appears that you are considering a proposed revised contract for the Fort Ritchie property at this week's meeting, according to the agenda. And as I'm sure you are aware, any material change to the contract is essentially a new contract. Modifications constitute a new contract that would be inappropriately made without the opportunity for full and open competition. It might quite possibly even illegally made. Therefore, I encourage you to reject these substantial changes and permit new offers. Since you are entertaining what is essentially a new offer, I would like to submit mine to you, if I may. I can hand it to you?
Oh, sure, certainly. You've also emailed this as well, correct?
I did, but it was today.
Okay, that's all right.
People actually receive
Thank you, sir.
their email. And that is identical to what I emailed you, yes.
Thank you very much. We'll continue with citizens' participation. Anyone else? Please come forward, second row. Name and address, please.
Good morning. John Krumpetich, 25720 Military Road, Cascade, Maryland.
Good morning, members of the board. Mr. President, I'm Tom Lynch from Miles and Stockbridge and Frederick, and I represent John.
Matthew Sesto with Frederick Seibert and Associates. We are consultants for the buyer.
I want to thank you, everybody, for their time. We got involved in this process, as all of you already know, because we're residents of Cascade. We raise our family there. Our kids go to school there. It's important to us. And the people of Cascade are the ones that I really believe in. And I would like my Cascade people to stand up right now, please. These are business owners. These are workers. These are people that took time out of their day today because they believe in this project and they know how important it is for the area. Okay, and what they have done, the assistance and the help that they have given us during this feasibility period cannot be quantified. It's very easy to quantify the money that has already been spent during this feasibility period, but these people's heart and effort can't be quantified. Business owners, heads of the community center, I mean, we have everybody here, people who specialize in classic building restoration. These are good, hardworking people, and they are the reason that we're doing this. Thank you. Our contract included a feasibility period. And that's exactly what we did. We wanted to see if this project was feasible. Okay? There are few properties in the county, let alone the state of Maryland, that carry the complexity that Fort Ritchie does, as all of you know. I also really want to comment on the cooperation of the county. Members of the county have been instrumental into us being able to get through this feasibility period with the information that was needed. Okay, folks like Andrew Eshelman, Susan Small, Mark Bradshaw, Jeremy Mose, these are good, hardworking folks of your staff that have helped us along every single step of the way. The truth is, everybody in this room knows Fort Ritchie, but more people should. And this project was never going to be feasible or never was going to work unless there was some county cooperation. And the changes have been because of that county cooperation. But as everything is public now, it's been made aware that the county is not the only ones that are cooperating. We are as well. Increase of purchase price. Okay, Property Owners Association that's benefiting the community center, stipulations for development to benefit the community center, lake maintenance participation. All of those things add into what we're trying to do. We want this to work, and I'm not interested in getting involved in a project that won't work. I know this will work, and I know this will work because of these people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Gentlemen, anyone else?
Just very briefly, Commissioners, this was a project that obviously the county had ownership in, interest in, and as a result gave public notice to the world. And every person in this county, actually people from outside this county, had the opportunity to do what John did, which is take the notice they got and enter into negotiations for a contract with the county. John did that. Whatever objections you're hearing are from people who didn't do that. They chose not to do that. They chose not to participate in the process. They haven't spent a fortune in evaluating this project. They could have done exactly what John did, which is negotiate with you a contract which you presented that had a study period. Everybody, when you have a contract of this complexity, provides for a study period so someone like John or anyone else can go into the project and evaluate all the ramifications of how this project could succeed or could fail. And John's done that with the help of very capable people, some of whom are sitting here, commercial realtors, people who have been involved in this project previously with Penmar. That kind of investigation and the investment of energy that John has made on this has cost a fortune, and now you have somebody coming that wants to present a contract to you, not having done any of that, not having participated in the process from the beginning, not having reacted to the notice when it was posted. And respectfully, it's a little too late for that. John has done what he's supposed to have done under your contract. We appreciate your help. We do appreciate what all of the county staff have done to work with us. There were things none of us knew when we entered into this. No one knew what the condition of the roads were. No one knew the full condition of the sewer. No one knew a lot of things, the availability of grant resources to help rebuild sewer. All of this information is relevant to evaluate the appropriate approach that should be made by a purchaser, and you all have understood that. So thank you really for participating with us in a process from the outset that you had the inception of by providing the notice. And we hope that you will entertain and pass the motion today to approve the Second Amendment. John is prepared to close. The resources are available. He's lined up the financing that's necessary to close. Haven't heard that from anybody else. And so as a result of this, we look forward to closing this deal. I think it's on April 4th. Thank you very much.
Final thing. The one thing this project has been missing all this time is belief. Belief that this is going to gain momentum and it's going to work. If you ask these folks, every step of the way, they've all been involved in it since '98, many of them. The belief that it's going to work. We have that belief now, that this is going to work. And I think that's as important as anything. Thank you very much.
And the one other thing I do want to add, sorry, Commissioners, is that John has been respectful of the environment up there. He's been respectful of the history. And you have heard that one of the elements of this is going to involve a museum to preserve the history of the Ritchie boys and the role that it played in the Second World War. Those are things that are very important to the citizens there and, frankly, to the citizens of the United States. So we much appreciate your positive vote.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Citizens' participation will continue. Anyone else in the second row or third row? Anyone else wishing to participate? Citizens' participation, please come forward. Seeing none, we will now move forward with the Funkstown Park acquisition. Paul Crampton, Andrew Eishelman, please come forward. Introduce yourself in the matter again. Thank you.
Morning, good afternoon, Commissioners. Andrew Eishelman, Director of Public Works.
Paul Crampton, and Mayor of Funkstown. Commissioners, I'd like to brief you on an update, which I think at our January joint meeting, I apprised you of the opportunity that the town of Funkstown had to possibly acquire the trailer park there in Funkstown and create a waterway park, if you will, a place where people can go down the Antietam Creek and get on and get off. And I think Andrew knows a lot more about the whole trail than I. But, you know, that's our idea to do that. And we would like to do this the way we did the Arch property, where we basically asked for forward funding. And then POS had the ability to apply for the funding to reimburse the county for that through the Land Grant Management Program, or the POS Land Management Fund. So I'm here requesting approximately $315,000 to be forward funded, to be completely paid back with POS funding. We're looking, I can tell you, we have received a signed contract this morning pursuant to the County Commissioner's blessing of this project, with us being able to have it reimbursed through POS.
So with that, I'll let Andrew give you the details.
So I can walk through a little bit of the logistics. As Paul mentioned, he's seeking this request to be reimbursed through program open space. So normally that application process is on an annual basis. And so this contract to sale would happen prior to the new year's funding being in place. We're currently working on our FY21 applications, and that money would be available in July. So that's the reason this is here before you, because ultimately it's the board's decision as to if you would grant program open space funding for the project. Acquisition funds are eligible for reimbursement for 100% of the project costs. So that is an attractive incentive. So a little bit of the logistics for what would have to happen, as Paul mentioned, the town is seeking forward funding from the county. So we would need to revise the current annual year program and apply approximately $50,000 from unencumbered reserve funds that the county has. And then based on applications that we've received so far and are currently reviewing with the Parks and Rec Board, the remainder could be paid off in the FY21 application. And those funds would be available in July. So that's a little bit of logistics, what would have to work. As far as other questions and concerns, this project was presented to the Parks and Rec Board, I believe, back in December. And so the status at that time was a little bit less certain, and there were some concerns that the board had at that time related to the project. Some of them were related to the request for a loan. I think that at least has partially been addressed in terms of how this project or any future other projects for that matter may tie up future funding. So as we received applications for the current year, as I stated, I think it can be paid off with this next year's prior application, so there wouldn't be any ongoing costs associated with it. There is an existing loan that the Funkstown has with the county. It's for what we call the arts property. So there's some discussion about that loan, which I believe has another 6 years before it's required to be paid back. And I think there's a remainder of approximately $220,000 or so remaining on that loan. The other question, and I'll let Mayor Crampton speak to this, is just what the town's plans are as far as the development of the park and the project, and as well as the potential relocation of the residents there and how that would be handled.
Sure. The town certainly doesn't want to misplace anybody in a rapid form. You know, we would reach out to all those individuals. I think our town manager, Brenda, has already reached out to Community Action Council. We'll work with the city and the county housing authority to get those people placed in other homes. We're looking at least a 1-year time period to give those folks plenty of time to be able to make that move. As the gentleman earlier spoke to, it's just became, it's been in disrepair over the last 20 years. And due to it being in a floodplain and the lack of being able to get permits to do work and renovate the trailers, it just hasn't been feasible for the property owner to be able to do that. So as I've sat there and came down that bridge many times, I've looked at it and said, what a beautiful place for a park, a nice big pavilion, a place to be able to have picnics and all. I think it would enhance the value of the town and as well as Washington County. And the town's been very fortunate in the last couple of years to be able to accumulate the parkland that we have for such a small community. And I would like to thank the county commissioners for all their help and the Parks and Recreation Board as well.
Real quick question, it's $315,000, that's just for the acquisition of the property?
That's for the acquisition. The contract is $295,000, and then the remainder would be our, of course, whatever we have to pay for settlement costs, attorney's fees, planning to be able to start with it, with some demolition, so whatever money we have left over, whatever trailers don't leave or vacate when people move, we're going to need to clean up some. So there'll be some money left for that, and whatever.
Yes, I'd clarify that the acquisition funds in program open space, there's acquisition and there's development funds. So the acquisition funds would just be for the acquisition, appraisals, closing, things like that. So as far as the relocation of the trailers and things, I don't believe that would be covered with this. That would have to be done on the town's part to take that to take that step.
Were these trailers personally owned, or are they owned by the general property?
A good
owner?
many of those trailers, there's not even clear deeds and titles. They've been there probably for 40 or 50 years. So the people that have had them have since left. And the people that owned the park then rented those trailers without even owning the trailer. So a lot of them aren't even movable to be able to get them out. So there's a little bit of everything there.
Commissioners, comments?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Paul, on the displacement of the families down there, so how will that work?
Well, I think we're going to have to actually approach each one of them. And as I said, we're looking at probably a 1-year process to give them notice that, we are going to ask them to vacate the premises. The town of Funkstown doesn't want to be in a situation of leasing and renting property there, and I don't think POS is really looking forward to that either. We want it to be a park. So, we'll work in cooperation with any agency that we can to get those people properly moved to another location.
So once you purchase that, the leases will be the responsibility of the town of Funkstown?
They will go to the town of Funkstown. I believe by talking to the property owner, most all are on a month-to-month. There's no long-term leases there.
So the county won't have any further obligations for making sure that they have a place to move?
No, sir.
I will say, under the fiscal impact part, a clarification, I have 180 days in there. Depending on how long that process takes to remove the trailers, that is tied to when the reimbursement can be received, because from program open space standpoint, they will reimburse once essentially the property is open and available to the public to use. And so the leasing could potentially affect that. And that's what we've had some discussions on, the pros and cons versus a longer time frame to allow for that to happen versus a shorter time frame to open it up. So I just want to make you aware that could affect the time frame for any repayment if we do go the option of the county forward funding the money.
And then the other question I had, you have there in your discussion point, it says funds, which includes reimbursement of up to 100%. So what happens if we don't receive the 100%?
Correct, and I think this is, as you see, this is a discussion at this point. I think he's looking for direction because we don't want to make any mistakes where he goes down a certain path prior to getting some sort of direction or concurrence that is needed in order for eligible expenses to be reimbursed. So to your point, yes, the county would be assuming, I guess, some responsibility if we are the ones lending the money. So in terms of any repayment, I think we would need to formalize how that would work in an agreement similar to what was done 4 years ago.
Are you looking for a consensus today or a vote to move forward?
I think what we would need today is a consensus that you support the project and that we could amend the current year's program open space allocation to get the project listed. That would allow us to move forward with requesting DNR for concurrence. So essentially any cost that would be incurred from this point forward would be eligible for reimbursement. And then the FY21 program open space projects will come before you tentatively in June. And so if you're giving your concurrence today, then you're more or less also saying that you agree to fund that project in FY21.
But Paul mentioned your contract's ready now?
Yes. Based upon the county commissioners granting that concurrence or vote, we would move forward. If I don't get that, then we probably would not move forward.
I would say I'm okay with it. So.
One last question. I support it. I think it's a great idea. But just for clarification, because you said the POS is 100% of the acquisition cost, so that's the $295. That extra $20,000, is there POS money for that?
The reason why we say $315 is because we don't want to have to come back in front of you if the purchase price is $295 and let's say there's appraisals and other closing costs, and say that's $10,000, so maybe it's $305,000. But this way, if we say it's $315 and it ends up being $315, those funds will just revert back to the unencumbered balance.
So you're looking for a vote or a consensus?
I think you should have a vote on a motion so that there's clarity when the minutes are reviewed.
My motion to move forward with the Funkstown Park acquisition.
Second.
First and second, is there any other?
So to be clear, that's to support the acquisition of the property and to make it eligible
Board
for
fund.
POS funding and to allow the reallocation or submission in the upcoming years programmatic
Correct.
agenda.
And then with the understanding that we'll come back before you with an agreement for the fiscal impact.
Okay, I'll
I
change
mean,
that.
Sarah hasn't weighed in yet. I know we talked briefly about how that will work because there's a question of where would the funds come from.
Yeah,
So
I
if you
mean,
wanna
I
know
think
that
there's a
now.
number of ways that it can be structured, but if the commissioners are on board to support it, we can determine those details at a later time.
All right. Any other question? There's the
I'll
first and the
just
second.
add to the motion what Kirk said. I guess you got that down. I couldn't repeat all that again, Kirk, sorry.
So what happens if this is not funded by POS? When will we officially know if this is funded by POS? mentioned
I mean,
the
it already meets the requirements. I've spoken with the DNR coordinator, so I've met with Paul and provided him a highlighted copy of all the steps to follow. So provided all those steps are followed, it should be the same as any other acquisition project with the additional complexity of the relocation.
And Paul told me in a side conversation, he'd just go ahead and write a check if it wasn't approved. Remember?
Well, I don't know if I personally go write the check, but I'll make sure
Um,
you get it paid back.
Okay. So I think it's going to be a great place. You have some great waterways there, and you're going to open up some beautiful country for Youngstown.
Yep,
Well,
thank you.
for all of Washington County.
For all of Washington County.
All right, Commissioners, we have first and second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of what's been submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next on our agenda, Fort Ritchie Cascade Sustainable Communities Designation Renewal. Jill Baker, please come forward, introduce yourself in the matter.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am Jill Baker. I am the Director of the Department of Planning and Zoning. Before you here today is a request to submit a letter to, excuse me, to the state of Maryland requesting a designation known as Sustainable Communities. This designation was approved for Fort Ritchie and the Cascade area in February of 2014. That designation expired in February of last year. It's a 5-year designation. We are looking to renew that so that we may take advantage of the refinancing, revitalization financing programs and tax incentive programs that can be available to those kinds of designated areas. This matter was brought before the commissioners in February of last year, and we did move forward to renew. However, that application was held by instruction by the former county administrator due to some ongoing negotiations that were happening in the Fort Ritchie area. We weren't exactly sure the direction that was going to happen, but now we have a pretty familiar path, I think, that we're going to go down. This benefits not just any future developers of Fort Ritchie, but this also benefits Washington County. It makes us available to submit for grants and loans through these tax credit programs for improvements to our water and sewer programs up there. So the request today would be to submit a letter to the state with our intent to renew our designation of sustainable communities for the Fort Ritchie Cascade area. There's also a map that's included within your packet that shows you the area. It's not just Fort Ritchie. It includes the residential areas just to the north and east of the fort. And there's also in your packet a handout that shows you all the different types of grant and loan programs that would be available under this designation. So we are seeking that approval to renew so that we may submit a new application this year.
Commissioners, comments?
Make the motion to submit the application to renew this sustainability communities.
Is there a second?
A second.
All right, first and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, the Fort Ritchie contract, Kirk Downey.
Commissioners, as you know, from the presentation discussions, the contract purchaser of Fort Ritchie has asked the county to make certain amendments to the contract of sale as a result of conditions discovered during the feasibility period that was provided for in the contract of sale. The parties have negotiated the requested amendments, and they are reflected in the second amendment to the contract. It is before you now for approval, so that the board can approve the second amendment. And if that occurs, it is expected that the feasibility period would expire in the very near future, and closing would occur in April as anticipated.
Commissioners' comments, thoughts?
Yeah, my comment is, when this property was first listed, and it was I thought it was under the intention to be sold as is, and that was my position when we marketed the property the last time. We advertised it as is, and to me, with all of the changes that have been made to the contract, it is a new contract. Mr. Comptich, if you're successful in the right to own this property, I do wish you nothing but success up there on that property. But I've always said from day one I wanted to get Washington County free of the Fort Ritchie property. And if I had to go back and change a vote in the beginning of time, I would have never supported us taking this project on. I did think it was going to be a great project for Washington County. But if it does move forward, I wish you nothing but success. But for me, my position was to sell the property as is and get Washington County out from under it. And with all of the concessions that have been made, I do, in my humble opinion, think it is a new contract, and it should be rebid. But that's just my position. And again, I wish you nothing but success if it moves forward today. And I just don't want to subject the county residents to all of the infrastructure needs up there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioner comments?
Well, I might as well weigh in. I'm always good at that. When I got elected, there had been a few years of negotiating, or a couple years anyway, with this complex, Cascade. You know, when I got elected, there wasn't even a price on it. There wasn't even a price on this property. I don't know how that slipped through. Then we had a $6 million, oh, no, wait a minute, we did several trips overseas. That's fine too, I guess. Then we did a $6 million contract that somehow didn't work. I mean, I look at the crew here, they're vested in the community. I've sold a lot of property in my life. I've sold a lot of property, and I've never seen a property that didn't have a feasibility study unless it was bought at an auction where it is as is. So feasibility study is pretty normal. And there's going to be stuff come up in a feasibility study. It's going to be stuff just what we're seeing. You know, if we would soon be spending $75,000 a month out of taxpayers' money. But we can take $1.8 million from John there and, okay, spend $1 million doing what's left in the feasibility study, have $800,000 left over, and we're still saving $75,000 a month. Now, this thing wasn't about getting, as I think Court mentioned this thing's not about making a ton of money. This thing is about economic development and getting a tax base. I don't care if we make any money on it. I want to make money in the long run on a tax base. I want to see it developed. I want to see new industry or new complexes. So, you know, I motion to move forward with, that's a motion.
Yeah, we want to wait for your motion. I think there might be other comments.
We can discuss it. I've motioned to move forward.
Okay, I got to address the motion, then we go to discussion between, okay? All right, I have a motion to approve. I need a second to go to discussion.
Was that the motion for?
Second amendment, yeah.
Okay. Yes. All right, now Now we have discussion.
I'll take some discussion. I also hope the Crumpages family is successful because that could be very good for the Fort Ritchie community and Cascade in general and Washington County also. My concern isn't about someone doing well and turning the property and making it succeed. That's a good thing. My concern has to do with the unknown liability that we're putting on taxpayers. A couple years ago, I think I was the loan commissioner at the time who made the loan dissenting no vote not to give away 60-plus acres of the Fort Ritchie property to the group we were working with at the time. And I took a little bit of heat from that. And I think here a couple years later, I'm still confident in that vote that I made. But I also said I hope that they were successful. My concern really has to do with the interest of the county taxpayers. I wish for a minute we would take our realtor hat off and look at the taxpayers, the unknown expense that we could put on them. The truth is, we did know about the sewer when the property was listed. That's why Jeremy Mose and his group was part of those discussions with anyone that had an interest in coming to look at the property. We did know about the conditions of the roads and the infrastructure and the defects. That's why we let Andrew Eshelman in our Public Works Department take part in those conversations. Those are things that we knew about. We knew about the water lines. We knew about the sewer lines were in disrepair. We know about the dam and the liability. A state delegate reached out to me and cautioned me that a couple years ago, I'm not exactly sure when, but apparently the state spent around $10 million to upgrade that dam. And then now that responsibility continues with the county, even if it is developed. It's the unknown liability that is a concern, is a concern to me. I'm fine with the selling price. I'm fine with the negotiations up until the point where the county, it was asked of us to assume and take on those liabilities in perpetuity. That's an unknown cost. We can't put a figure on that. I think an estimate of some of the road repaving was given to us of around $800,000 just for the roads that the county taxpayers will have to spend. I have to explain to my citizens on a routine basis every summer when we do the, what's it called, the stone and chip seal of our roads. Why can't we put down asphalt on our roads? And then now I have to explain that we are going to pay to upgrade roads for a development. That is outside of county policy and outside of county practice. Typically, when a developer comes in and creates a development or improves something, they bring that infrastructure up to county standards and then we take it over. And I would be in agreement to that. So I'm not a no across the board. I want to be consistent with what we've done in the past. We can put a dollar amount on the sale of the Fort Ritchie property, but we can't put a dollar amount on what those future costs will be for us. And I fear for the taxpayer and what they will have to pay for this. I received a letter just yesterday from a local real estate agent. I'll pass it around. I promised I would give it out. I'll let you read it for yourselves, but one line I do want to read is, when I learned that the Washington County was offering the property as is, I had several interested parties inquire about the roads, the infrastructure, and most importantly, the responsibility of the dam. I personally saw many problems and recommended to the developers that if they rendered an offer, they would need to consider the cost of these concerns and get a clear clarification on the dam responsibility. The concerns, the defects of the property was known. It was listed as is. I believe our county attorney, county interim administrator even confirmed that when we were reviewing the multiple offers that we received, we asked for a best and final offer. And it did not include, none of the offers that we received at that time included us taking on these responsibilities in perpetuity. I just have a concern for the taxpayers. I want the project to succeed, but it's the unknown cost that we would levy on the taxpayers. That's not fair to them. I was elected also to do good for the county, but to look out for 150,000 taxpayers. And I can't justify taking on these responsibilities. I would be in favor of the proposal if it was as is, as it was advertised, and we made our concerns known up front. But to take on these responsibilities in perpetuity, it is a different offer. I think that might warrant, if we wanted to take on these responsibilities, resubmitting the offer, putting the offer out for future bids, for more bids. But it's a different offer. I can't support us taking on that liability in perpetuity for our taxpayers.
You know, my job as a commissioner is to take advice from everybody I can smarter than me, and that's pretty much all of you. So, with that being said, raise your hands who was the staff involved in this. Come on, get them up. Every director. We had 10 or 15 directors. If I cannot trust them to give me a good estimate on what I'm getting into, then things are sad at the county. The taxpayers better be worried about that. So I'm trusting them. I'm done. We got a first and a second.
Is there any more discussion? We have a motion on the floor. Terry, anything?
I've already stated my position. I wish them nothing but the best, and again, echo many of the same things that Commissioner Kiefer said. My concern is the millions that the taxpayers are going to spend doing the upgrades to the infrastructure of this property.
All right, I have a first and a second. Hearing no more discussion, I call for the vote to approve the proposed Second Amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
3-2. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everyone. Next on our agenda item, the acceptance of easement from the town of Williamsport, which Todd Moser, welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Acceptance of easement from the town of Williamsport. Todd Moser, Real Property Administrator, Division of Engineering. Move to approve the acceptance of easement consisting of 5,280 square feet from the town of Williamsport. Town of Williamsport will grant the county an easement that adjoins to the former Miller Lumber Company that will allow stormwater infrastructure to be placed over the easement. The Maryland Economic Development Corporation, otherwise known as MEDCO, has proposed that the town of Williamsport grant the county an easement for stormwater infrastructure to be placed over the easement for the new C&O Canal headquarters. The maintenance of the easement and stormwater infrastructure will be the responsibility of MEDCO for the life of the ground lease between the county and MEDCO.
Commissioners, comments?
I move to approve the acceptance of the easement.
Second. First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was a yes on that, Jeff.
Sewer budget adjustment request, Mark Bradshaw. Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself in the matter.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Mark Bradshaw. I'm Deputy Director for Environmental Management. I'm here today to request a budget adjustment be completed. In our CIP budget for FY20, we had $500,000 worth of bonds being issued for pump station upgrades, various locations. At this time, the county has not designated a need for that money or a pump station that needed to be upgraded. So therefore, we're requesting that not to take the bonds in this in the 20 budget, but to postpone it to a later date in which we identify a pump station that will need to be upgraded.
Mark, is this in relation to the question I asked, was it last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, about what pump stations would be included in the bond funding?
The bulk of the money in the project right now is designated for what we call the Oak Ridge Pump Station, which is across from Marty Snook Park. We're proposing to do an upgrade to that station, and that's where the bulk of the money will be designated for. And then we also have the Village Square Pump Station out towards Smithsburg that we want to do some work for. We have money available in our current CIP money without the bond money to cover those two projects, and we still would have a little bit left over. And in addition, in the FY21 budget, we have another $275,000 programmed to come in bonds in FY20, which will be July 1st.
The halfway station, that's the one that, no other nice way to put it, it emits odors. Isn't that one back there in that Oak Ridge development? Or has that
Not really.
been
The Oak
solved
Ridge
with-
one has, the issue with Oak Ridge is the wet well's too small.
Okay.
In the event that we get a high water alarm, for some reason the pumps don't operate, we have 5 minutes to respond before we, unfortunately, would flood basements. So we're proposing to go in and increase the wet well capacity to give us a greater response time and upgrade the entire station.
Other than 5 minutes.
Yes. Yeah, we'd like a little more time than that, maybe 7.
That means you almost have to be out in the driveway of that loop.
You would have to be sitting in the driveway, correct?
This is just a separate question. On pump stations in new areas where they're going to be required for, say, if a developer comes in and they want to expand their development or want to have a development and they're going to require pump station,
Yes.
who pays for that?
The developer will pay for it. He will pay for the design, construction. Everything is built to our standards and specifications, which we have online, so everybody has a copy of it. The plans will come into our office, and they will be reviewed for us for compliance. And in addition, a pump station will also have to go through the state of Maryland for a permit for a pump station.
And then once it's turned over to the county, and then it becomes the county's
Then
responsibility.
it becomes ours for O&M costs and any future upgrade that may be required down the road.
Commissioners, any other questions?
And, so did you say where this, what pump stations, these upgrades, where are they going to occur at? You probably said that, Mike.
Oak Ridge will consume approximately $1.1 to $1.2 million is what the estimate is for Oak Ridge. And then the Village Square pump station is approximately $50,000. The CIP account currently has 1.9 in it with the $500,000 bond. So if we remove the $500,000 bond, the CIP will have 1.4 million, and we're going to use approximately 1.25 of it for these 2 pump stations designated.
Where are we going to move these bonds, or are we just not going to issue?
We're not going to issue them. So the concern on the finance side is that we don't want to issue bonds that we don't have a plan for use. So bonds have to be used within a 2 to 3 year period.
Must have been a plan at one time, so what was the plan at one time?
I'm not sure if there was one or if it
One
was
time
just an amount
we looked at
programmed.
upgrading the PO2 pump station, and we reevaluated that, and we're not going to upgrade the PO2 pump station. We're just going to replace the existing pumps with in-kind pumps.
And that PO pump station's also at Oak Ridge or at Village Square?
They're all under this one category, the CIP category pump stations upgrades, yes. So we're not going to do the PO2 pump station that we originally planned on doing a couple years ago.
Commissioners, satisfied? Any more questions? If not, entertain a motion to approve the budget adjustment.
First, I'd like to say thank you for saving the taxpayers some money, and then second, approval of the budget adjustment.
Is there a second?
Second.
A first and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. 5-0. Thank you very much. Next up, Governor's Office for Children, Community Partnership. Staff, please come forward, introduce yourself in the matter.
Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Latepole, Senior Grant Manager with the Office of Grant Management. I'm here today seeking approval for the submission of the fiscal year 21 Community Partnership Agreement proposal to the Governor's Office for Children, requesting $723,447 and to accept funding as awarded. On behalf of and at the direction of the Local Management Board, the Office of Grant Management requests approval to submit a proposal requesting funding for 6 programs impacting the well-being of children, youth, and families in Washington County, as well as support for county administrative expenses. The funding requested by the Local Management Board includes the following programmatic strategies and their respective vendors. Family-Centered Support Services, and the vendor is the Department of Social Services. And the amount of funding requested is $78,800. The next program is School-Based Mental Health Services, and the vendor is Brook Lane Health Services, Inc. And the amount of funding requested is $226,560. The next program is Disconnected Youth Program Enhancements, and the vendor is Western Maryland Consortium. The amount of funding requested is $67,687. Family Strong Program, and the vendor is to be determined by request for proposals. The amount of funding is $90,000. True Opportunities Program, vendor is Potomac Case Management, and the funding requested is $90,000. Local Care Team Coordinator, and an RFP will determine the vendor, and the amount requested is $49,000. The grant will provide $121,400 to the Office of Grant Management for the administrative costs of the Local Management Board. Are there any questions?
So there's really no fiscal impact, but your office is reimbursed for your time.
Correct.
And you need approval for this submission for these.
Yes, please.
Commissioners, any comments, questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Passes. Thank you very much. Next, passenger terminal expansion. Mr. Plessinger, please come forward, introduce your staff.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm here to seek the approval to submit the application, accept the award funding for the 2020 entitlement funds through the FAA in regards to acquiring a passenger boarding bridge. The proposed funding is for the Hagerstown Regional Airport to acquire the passenger boarding bridge to provide cover for the passengers to safely enter and exit the aircraft without entering into the elements. This grant is using the entitlement funds for 2020 through the FAA. Funding will be 90% from the Federal Aviation Administration, as well as a match requirement of 5% for the Washington County, and 5% from the Maryland Aviation Administration. Actually, this week, after we prepared this ARF, we've heard back from the Maryland Aviation Administration. They have had a little bit of difficulty in the funding aspect and have changed their guidelines a little bit. So we did receive numbers from them as well. So instead of the 5% at $56,200, they will only be contributing $51,100, and we would have to make up the rest, which would put us up to $60,301. So a little bit of adjustment on there with recent actions. Moving forward, do we have any questions?
Commissioners, questions? And you're requesting to submit and to accept this award.
Correct.
I do have a question, and I
Sure.
apologize, because on this, the math doesn't make sense on this to me. It says 1,011,606 is the 90%, and then if we put our 56,200, that equals the 1,067,806.
Commissioner, I'll correct that. My name is Mahesh Kukara with Airport Design Consultants. You're the county's aviation consultant for the airport. The actual numbers, we're just going over those. The FAA total is $1,011,606. The Maryland Aviation Administration will be $52,100. And the county share, the sponsor share, will be $60,301. So the grant total comes out to $1,124,007.
Gotcha. That makes much more sense.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Commissioners, any more comments?
And that 1,124,000 is what we need for this.
Correct. For the passenger boarding bridge.
Okay.
Yep.
Motion to approve to submit and accept the award.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I want to make,
Do a second and do
Second.
discussion.
I'll second.
Discussion.
I just want to make sure that we understand that our match is not 56,000, it's 301. I just want to make.
For correction, I have first and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Hey, you're back. Welcome
We're
back.
back.
Runway rehabilitation, please introduce the matter, sir.
Thank you. So we are looking for the approval to submit application and accept reward funding for the runway rehabilitation of runway 927. This is basically a mill and overlay of our main runway. The proposed funding is for the Hagerstown Regional Airport to rehabilitate the runway. The project will consist of milling out a portion of the existing pavement and overlaying new asphalt. This project will extend the life of the airport's runway in order to maintain operation. This grant is using discretionary funds through the FAA. The funding will be 90% Federal Aviation Administration, as well as the matching requirement for 5% Washington County and 5% from Maryland Aviation Administration as well. When also we were looking into the budget, Kelsey Mason and I, and we need to true up the CIP. This was a previous project in the CIP, and we're expecting to receive more funding through this discretionary grant than we originally had programmed in that CIP. So you will see a budget adjustment later on when the grant is awarded. And that true up is expected to be right around $500,000, which our contribution to that would be right around $32,000. Local match.
Garrison, you just got to change them bottom numbers. We
I
got
know.
6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 7. I fly out there.
We had a
That's
7
bad
on
luck.
there, didn't we? Yep.
Commissioner,
Bad luck.
comments, questions? If not, this entertain a motion for the submission and accepting of the funding, if
Make
awarded.
the motion.
Have a first, is there a second? Second. All, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye, 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. What's this? I should say it. Thank you. We are now going into recess. Sarah, I believe you're up.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Welcome to the first of many budget discussions over the next couple months. Next week, I do plan to present to you departmental requested budgets for all general fund departments. I plan to present general fund revenues, the projections that we have, as well as a draft of our 5-year plan. That's for next week. For this week, we have 3 budget presentations here for your consideration. No adjustments have been made to these budget requests. So once general fund revenues are evaluated, changes may be necessary. The 3 separate budgets that will be presented to you today include the Humane Society, the law enforcement budget, and the emergency services budget. I do want to make a correction to the ARF that you have in front of you. The total FY 2021 general fund requests, the amount is incorrect. Please make the correction of $251,792,570. That's $251,792,570, which represents $18 million over the final 2020 budget, or 7.7%.
Brought it down a little bit. Good job.
What's that?
You brought it down a
Yes.
little bit.
Well, through our review, we found some things that, should have been corrected before the requested was solidified. So we wanted to go ahead and make those changes. And so, without anything further, I will welcome Ms. Colin Berry up here for the Humane Society budget.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Colin Berry. I'm the Executive Director of the Humane Society of Washington County, and I have our Field Service Director, Crystal Mowry, here too. Thank you so much for having us here today to talk about our budget request and to give you more information. I want to start with information about the Humane Society's animal control contract requires not only that we respond to animal-related calls in the field, but also that we accept stray animals who are brought to us at the shelter in need of refuge. Because of this, the Humane Society serves as the hub for both hundreds of happy reunions between owners and lost pets, and thousands of new beginnings for animals who were never reclaimed. I'll Although our contract with the county assumes that only 70% of the animals we take in and care for are related to animal control, we actually exceed that. In 2019, 77% of the animals who came to us came through animal control. Last year, while fulfilling our commitment to protect the animals of Washington County, we received 2,078 animal control calls. Just under half of those were related to animal cruelty, requests to assist first responders who were faced with animal-related issues that were also challenging them and preventing them for performing their public safety duties. So the Humane Society also accepted nearly 2,200 stray animals through our Shelters Resource Center, and that's in addition to abandoned animals and owner-surrendered animals. In addition to protecting the animals, we're also committed to protecting the residents of Washington County, and I wanted to highlight here some of those examples. Our animal control officers do this through documenting bite reports and identifying vicious and dangerous dogs in the community. And they collect evidence, build cases, and work tirelessly to ensure that the behavior of these animals isn't overlooked or dismissed. In addition, we keep Washington County safe through our partnership with the Washington County Health Department, and we administer nearly 3,000 rabies vaccinations a year. Because of the overabundance of feral and community cats in our county, we've also buckled down and made a commitment to grow our TNR program. In 2019, you'll see we spayed, neutered, and vaccinated 373 feral cats. And this was funded almost entirely through private donations at this point. And because TNR is so critical to reducing the number of unwanted cats in our county, our goal for 2020 is to TNR 600 feral cats. Continuing to grow the program will prevent the birth of thousands upon thousands of unwanted kittens over the next 3 to 5 years, and will consequently prevent more and more unsocial cats from entering the Humane Society. This allows our staff more time to focus on reuniting lost pets and placing unowned animals who are social in new loving homes. Despite the fact that the core function of our job revolves around animals, our positive impact on Washington County extends so much further than that. In fact, our impact is felt by many residents, including the vulnerable and underserved populations that you see listed here. Seniors are a core focus for the Humane Society and for our officers in the field. Why? Well, it's because we know that the only companionship some seniors have left is that of their pet, and we believe in protecting this relationship. In addition, research indicates that having a pet lowers blood pressure, increases mobility and independence, eases anxiety, and reduces depression. These are life-saving benefits that none of us can afford to ignore. In 2019, our officers helped 111 seniors keep their animals. For example, while at an annual outreach event at Walnut and Potomac Towers, officers learned that pets are only allowed if residents are able to prove that they've received their annual vaccinations. Unfortunately, as we know, many of those residents were unable to transport their pets, much less afford it. So our officers worked with the staff there to organize a day where our vet team from the shelter went to them. Together, we were able to vaccinate animals belonging to 67 residents, allowing those individuals to keep their beloved pets. In addition, we have a pet food bank at the shelter, and we also reached out to the Meals on Wheels program nearly 2 years ago to help fill their need for pet food. Similarly, our officers just launched a program called Meals for Paws, and this is a program that also helps Walnut Tower residents, Potomac Towers, C.W. Brooks, and Elizabeth Court. Currently, we provide pet food once a month to 29 qualifying seniors, and we've already been notified of others who are in desperate need. We also provide short-term help to residents of Washington County through multiple public assistance programs. We offer low-cost spay-neuter vouchers, which are subsidized by grants and by dog licensing fees. And we also offer low-cost wellness clinics at the Humane Society's Veterinary Center. This allows pet owners access to low-cost preventative veterinary care. In addition, we host 3 rabies clinics throughout Washington County each year, and we participate in multiple outreach opportunities where we distribute thousands of pounds of pet food and supplies. During special events like National Night Out, we also integrate humane education where we share materials on interacting safely with dogs and how to properly care for animals. The Humane Society also opens our door year-round to students so that they can build their confidence and improve their reading skills through our Reading with Dogs program. We believe deeply in strengthening these partnerships within the community, and we strive to work with other organizations whenever we can. One example of this is our participation in United Way's National Day of Caring, where we helped launch the first ever animal-related track. We took our animals into nursing homes where they brought smiles and elicited wonderful memories shared by dozens and dozens of seniors. We also welcome residents of Star Community to the shelter 2 to 3 times a week, and these individuals help create critical enrichment toys and spend time with our animals. In addition to working hard to help people and their animals out in the community, we work tirelessly within the shelter to find loving, forever homes for the homeless animals of Washington County. We do this through creative adoption promotions and through partnerships with local businesses. We regularly tweak our marketing and outreach efforts and do everything we can to place these animals. In 2019, these efforts resulted in an impressive 83% live release rate of the animals in our care. So in order to support the Humane Society's work to enforce the county animal control ordinance and state laws, to care for and place thousands of animals a year, and to support our efforts to help vulnerable and underserved residents of Washington County, we are requesting $1.47 million for fiscal year 2021. This is a 5% increase from our current budget and is essential to fulfilling our commitment to public safety and animal protection. It's also critical to maintaining our community outreach programs that help thousands of people every year. Here, I would like to walk you through a few highlights of our request. While you know that our animal control officers enforce ordinances and laws, you might not know what this actually entails. Our officers have arrest powers for on-view misdemeanor animal cruelty violations, and because of the nature of their work, they find themselves in dangerous situations on a daily basis. They carry tasers, they wear bulletproof vests, and they are required to have pre-exposure rabies vaccinations to protect them. They must also be certified to euthanize animals, which is a tragic but necessary part of our job, and they must be available for court after hours and be available for mandatory on-call shifts. As you can imagine, it's really difficult to find qualified individuals who are willing to do all of these things. So given these stringent demands, we increased our hourly pay rate for animal control officers last year, resulting in the increase you see here. We have also made improvements to our animal care department as we've increased our focus on in-house veterinary care and on building on our enrichment programs. These are both key to helping keep animals healthy and in reducing the number of behavioral issues that can develop in long-term group housing situations. As a result, we've shifted several positions across departments to better meet the needs of our animals. And doing so has allowed us to put more time into caring for and healing victims of neglect and cruelty, much like the one you see pictured here in the before and after photo. This change contributed to the increase that you will see in our animal care budget as well. In addition, there was a jump in minimum wage, as you know, and another one coming. And we have also added a new critical position in our receiving clinic. This is a vet tech position, which will help bridge the shelter and our vet center. It's a critical position as this person in the receiving clinic will help lead the intake, evaluation, and triage of more than 5,000 animals a year. In addition, we have drastically improved our cleaning protocol over the past year by changing to a non-toxic product that has been clinically proven in group and animal housing to be the single most effective disinfectant product on the market. So this led to an increase in the supply and food budget line, but it'll undoubtedly lead to a decrease in animal illness. In addition to the highlights I just mentioned, the Humane Society will be facing additional expenditures in excess of over $500,000 over the next 2 to 3 years. While we didn't include these expenses in this year's budget request, purchasing a new animal control truck and repairing and reconstructing the shelter's HVAC system are critical to us successfully carrying out our contractual obligations with the county. So again, I just want to thank you for allowing us to present our request today and to share with you the many ways your support aids in our mission and impacts our community, both human and animal. In closing, we respectfully request that you approve the Humane Society's budget request in full so that we may continue to keep Washington County safe and continue to provide opportunities for animals and people to enrich one another's lives. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions before they leave?
Does more money increase, it probably doesn't, does it increase the live release rate?
It is expensive to save lives, obviously, so some of our funding has gone towards that to increase the live release rate. Some of these animals who require more veterinary care, but we do have several restricted accounts that have been set up by donors specifically for those, so we try to offset with those special accounts.
What are your other sources of funding? I know you do fundraisers, but how much is that a part of your funding mechanism?
We do about $100,000 a year through some of our fundraisers where we're actually out in the community having events where we have people come in and from around the community and have celebrations like our luau or polar bear. We also have community-based fundraisers where people have fundraisers for us out in the community. For example, we just had one with Route 11 Tattoo where they raised quite a bit of money for us there. We also have major donors and individual outreach through direct mail programs and through some social media fundraising.
Nick, for that question, what is your total budget?
Total budget is just over, this is about 53% of it, so around 2.7.
And for the commissioner's information, if you'd like additional detail on the Humane Society budget, you can find it in tab 13 of your budget books.
Another question.
Welcome.
If you didn't enforce animal control ordinances, laws, who would that responsibility fall upon?
I would like Crystal to answer that, please.
You have a
Mowry.
speaking part today.
Thank you, Jeff. Actually, we put that question back to you. Who would do it? Because there's no one else asking that I'm aware of at this time.
So how many animal control officers do you have at this time, and did increasing the pay help or not in your recruitment? Because I saw your ads.
Yeah, we currently have the budget for 3 officers, and then myself, and then we have a full-time dispatcher and a part-time dispatch TNR assistant.
And you do have to go to court and make appearance for many of these?
That's correct. We prepare our own cases and our own evidence. We write and execute our own search warrants, and we attend district or circuit court. I've even had to attend Court of Appeals. And then, of course, we have the Animal Control Authority that we go to once a month, excuse me, for court for all of our civil cases.
I have one more. Your partnership with the Commission on Aging, is that going to grow, expand? How's that working out again? I know you're working with them with meals for the pets.
We are, and it's really in conjunction with some of the other programs we're doing where the individual people don't necessarily need food, but like some of the ones I mentioned at the towers where their animals do need the food. So yes, we are continuing to provide food whenever asked through Commission on Aging.
When they have called, we usually have food from our food bank. There was an instance that they were very desperate, needing food for them. So we actually took $900 out of our budget, and I personally drove to 2 different Walmarts and loaded a van up and got them the food they needed.
I think the concern from the Meals on Wheels program, the folks were feeding half their meal to their beloved pet.
And that's horrifying. I heard that, and I reached out to them 2 years ago at the county budget meeting presentations, and I reached out to them the next day and said, what can we do to help?
Okay. Any other questions for anyone?
I thought it was a real good presentation, actually, and anybody knows me know I'm a sucker for this. So, I'm typically more impressed that you guys do a lot of fundraising. I go to a lot of them myself, and you don't see that very often for people asking for an increase or their budgets. They don't, that's going to be one of my criteria questions. How much fundraising do you guys do? I know you guys do a lot. So anyway, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Commissioners, anything else from anyone? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next, Commissioners, I'd like to welcome the Sheriff for the law enforcement budget presentation. You can find additional detail in tab 8 of your budget books.
Sheriff Mondor, welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for having us today. Okay, so there's multiple budgets within the Sheriff's Office. We'll start out with judicial, which will be requesting an increase of 3.38%. Primarily, that's due to the salary increases, the step and COLA increase that's being requested. The operating expenses is actually only being requested for $2,870, and that's primarily for increased costs in the uniforms, which we just awarded that bid about a month ago, and also increase in fuel usage for the cruisers. Process servers, we're requesting an increase of about 4%, all of which is as a result of an increase in the salary, the COLA, and the step increase. On the patrol side, it's a 5.35% increase request. Wage and benefits increasing by $595,740. $63,462 is being requested for an additional senior office associate to maintain warrants and civil orders. And if I could for a second, I want to go over that. We currently have 2,529 warrants on file. And each one of those warrants have to be entered and then validated in intervals. It takes about 40 minutes or a little bit longer to do each warrant entry. We receive 375 average warrants per month, and every warrant must be checked by another person. So there has to be not only the entry, but then there has to be a quality assurance. And these are all requirements of the Criminal Justice Information System for us to be able to enter those into NCIC and miles. We are getting behind in doing that. We currently have 3 personnel that do that. We have 1 quality assurance person. We have 2 people that do entry and validations. We also, as part of this, we average about 131 protective orders a month that also have to be processed and entered into the system. It takes about 30 to 40 minutes for each one of those as well. In addition, the state has now put a requirement on us that every time there is a change in any of those, the warrant or protective order, we have to do a complete workup on those and enter those again, which also takes about 40 minutes per to do those. Each warrant must be validated 90 days after it's been entered into the system and every year thereafter. So again, each one of those have to be validated, and that requires the deputy to go back and make sure that, first of all, the warrant is still valid through the courts, that they haven't done a recall or a return process, and then we have to do a complete workup on those again to validate them in the system. In 2019, the Sheriff's Office received 4,511 warrants, 1,570 protective orders. So you can see it about 40 minutes apiece, the time that's required to do that. And that's just if it's only entered one time. Every time there's any kind of modification, if the court extends the time or makes any kind of a change, we have to go back and re-enter those and do a complete workup on those. As I explained, we currently have 3 personnel. We have 1 Hagerstown Police Department records person, and we have 2 from the Sheriff's Office that do this process. Currently, what we're doing on the entry of the warrants, we're doing the basic entry. We cannot keep up with actually doing the full workup on those. We're back logged on doing that. If we do not continue in this process, these warrants will actually get purged from the system and would have to be totally re-entered. And that's where we are at this point. We've been struggling with this for several years now, and we can't continue to struggle with this. We need to desperately have this position. In addition, we're also asking $3,488 to upgrade the property fleet and grant management position from a grade 10 to a grade 11. We've added responsibility to that individual with the retirement of Andrea Wine, who used to do the fiscal management of the grants. We now have transferred that responsibility to this position because we have a new person that's actually an office associate and is not able to keep up with those things. So in order to be able to satisfy the requirements of the grant, we have transferred that responsibility to this position and are asking for an appropriate upgrade. On the patrol operating expenses, we're requesting an increase of $35,510 or 1.69%. That's primarily due to increased requests for ammunition for the 33 new rifles that we are purchasing for our patrol deputies, as well as the increased cost for the uniforms as a result of the awarding of the previous bid. The budget also contains a request for $29,400 for controllable assets, which is for replacement of bulletproof vests. They have to be replaced every 5 years. That's what they are warranted for. A launcher for our CS gas, and also an air conditioner recovery unit that will allow us to recover the Freon from our vehicles and be able to recycle those. Currently, we have to take those out to someone in the community, and it's very expensive to do that. It's actually going to be a cost savings to allow us to be able to do that. Let's move on to central booking. Wages and benefits are increasing by $69,730 or 7.12%. Part of that is for the step increase in the COLA, and also part of it is we had a change in personnel there. We've added people who actually had a higher salary into the central booking, and there was several promotions that we did there as well through changes in that operation. The operating expense requested is an increase of $160. The detention center, we're actually requesting a 4.86% increase there, $486,590 or 4.04% is proposed increase in wage and benefits. The operating expenses request is $330,900 or 9.69%. And the majority of that is related to the medical costs. We are obligated under contract to increase that under a CPI for medical costs. And then there's also an increase in utilities, electric and water. In capital outlay, there's a requested increase of $14,560 for 15 ballistic vests that will expire in fiscal '21 that need to be replaced. The day reporting center, it's actually a change of minus 1.11%. Wages and benefits are increasing by $10,260. However, the operating expenses are decreasing by $15,730, and that's primarily due to the number of people that we've added to the program has reduced the cost of what we pay to on contract basis to our providers. We currently have just under 50 people in the day reporting center, and we have about a dozen people as part of the adult drug court, and those numbers increase on a weekly basis. The Narcotics Task Force, we're asking for a 12.78% increase of $109,590. 13,520 of that is for wage and benefit increases. But there's also a decrease in some of the health insurance as one of the employees had changed their coverage. The operating expense request increased by $69,940. Majority of that is for the laboratory. As you well know, the Washington County government subsidizes or aids in the Western Maryland Regional Laboratory, which we share with the city of Hagerstown. And they've had to increase an administrative position and also a part-time chemist because they are certified, have to be certified in the state of Maryland to operate as a forensic laboratory. And to share in that cost, that's an increase of $64,940. And again, part of that, half of that's paid by the city, half of it's paid by the county. We're also requesting $26,130, and that's to continue our program for the special response team. That would purchase 4 helmet mount vision binoculars, which we started several years ago. The Washington County Police Academy is a budget of $99,000 projected. There is no increase in that. So what we take in through the revenue from tuition for each one of the candidates to go to the academy, that's what we expend in the budget. There is no cost to the county. That's strictly done through what we take in through those. We do accept candidates from other agencies from Western Maryland, anywhere from Frederick West. So we currently are in the second police academy now, and we'll be starting another academy on July 7th of 2020, and then be doing 2 academies in the next fiscal year. So I'll be happy to entertain any questions you may have on the Sheriff's Office budget.
Your academy's been full?
Yes, sir. And we expect the next one, I know the city police is anticipating about 9 in the next academy. I believe Frederick County is going to be putting some into the academy as well. And then we also get from Cumberland, Allegheny, and some from Garrett County as well.
Did the incentive work?
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
We currently have 2 open positions, one through a resignation that just occurred a couple of weeks ago, and one that dropped out of the academy. I will tell you that we did get the reimbursements through our contract. Thank you, Court. And we also have those positions already filled. We have 1 cadet that will be starting in the academy in July, and then we have 1 other position that we have a lateral transfer that will probably be taking place here shortly.
Starting salary of a deputy is?
I'm going to defer to my patrol commander. What? Yeah, it's 44 and some change, and then if it's a lateral, it's 47 and some change. I will tell you that on the detention side, we have a severe shortage of personnel. We cannot get caught up with them, and at a later date, I will be coming back to you to ask for the incentive for them as well. We're struggling. We've been around 10 positions short, which is about 10% of our staffing for some time with them. And as we get people in, other people are leaving. Corrections is
They don't have to go through the academy, right?
They have an academy, but it's a shorter academy. It's
Short
about 2 months, a little over 2 months.
And their starting pay?
36 and some change. I think it's 36.8. Any questions? Other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sheriff, do you have anyone here to present the contraband or the inmate welfare budget?
Okay. Apologize, but I did not bring those because I didn't know you. We
I have
typically-
a summary here if you
Okay, sure.
like
I'll
them.
be glad to do that. We typically haven't presented those in the past because those are kind of an intake and. That's okay. I'll do it.
The contraband is a zero budget.
Right.
Of requests as they come forward.
Sure. Okay, so the contraband is funds that are seized through forfeiture through the Narcotics Task Force. And actually, we're not requesting any changes there at all. So that will be a 0% request. On the inmate welfare, that is money that's collected through commissary accounts, through the phone accounts, et cetera. And there are certain things that we pay out of that. For example, we pay for GED, for instructor for GED. We pay for things like we just purchased and actually installed and are doing the training for an X-ray machine in the detention center to help prevent contraband from coming into the facility. And so we're asking for actually it'll be a decrease this year of minus 22.98%. That'll be a decrease in some revenues, and also I will point out that we made changes to our video bail, to our video visitation. So now what we have, instead of the computer screens, we actually have iPad tablets that the inmates can do visitations and so forth with their loved ones. We're able to give them more visits. It makes it more economically feasible. It didn't cost the county taxpayers for that change, and so we can do the reduction in the inmate welfare account.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Sorry to put you on the spot there.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I'm always good on the spot.
Sarah, next up. Emergency Services next. Please come forward. Identify yourself.
Good afternoon, David Hayes, Director of Emergency Services.
Dale Fishak, President, Washington County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association.
So we're going to be presenting the 7 department budgets that fall under the Division of Emergency Services. Those departments are 911, Emergency Management, Fire, EMS, Volunteer Programs, the Air Unit, which is now currently known as Emergency Support Services. We co-share budgets with the association, and Special Operations. The division manages the 911 center that handles approximately 200,000 telephone calls into the center annually and processes almost 40,000 emergency incidents. And the division as a whole supports all of those agencies, and in some cases collectively with the Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association. So moving through our budgets, we'll go through the Air Unit first, and I'll give you the comparisons. For FY20, our budget request was our current budget is $30,250. For FY21, our request is $29,720 for a decrease of $530, or minus 1.75%. And most of that is relative to operating expense requests that were decreased by $6,430. We do have a request in there for $1,500 to replace office furniture. Most of the furniture that's in that building is hand-me-down, and in some cases probably been there almost since the inception of the Air Unit back in the late 60s. So that budget request, again, is down 1.75%. Our Special Operations Division current operating budget is $83,370. The requested budget is $262,360, or an increase of $178,990, or a 214.69% increase. The bulk of that is covered in the capital outlay request, which total $161,000, of which $142,800 represents self-contained breathing apparatus that is end of service life, $9,000 to put a new trailer under one of our boats. That's a custom manufactured trailer that is not something you can buy commercially. And then $9,360 for communication equipment. and those are headsets for the boat to allow them to have better communications when they're operating on our water events, and then likewise headset communications for our hazmat techs to utilize when they're in their level A suits and encapsulated. The current headset equipment we have for that does not function with our newer APX 8000 radios. So the next budget is 911 communications. In there you'll see 2 position requests. I'll cover them in just a short bit. The operating budget for FY20 is $5,484,300. The requested operating budget is $6,189,320 for an increase of $705,020 or 12.86% increase. The wages and benefits are increasing by $650,270 or 13.26%. And if you go back to FY20, we were authorized to hire an additional 4 911 call takers, and there are also personnel requests totaling $168,250 for the 2 new positions I spoke about. It also includes programming dollars for the $3 an hour on-call pay, and it also includes the temporary upgrades for the supervisors as needed. Our operating expenses increased by $44,700, and the majority of that increase is electric and uniforms. The budget also contains $9,600 for computer monitor upgrades. We purchased half of them in last year's operating budget. The request is to complete the second purchase of the second half. To cover the 2 positions that are requested, one is a CAD IT support specialist. It will be a grade 11 step 1, $43,826, and that's to support our current single CAD IT specialist that has to manage the entire infrastructure and network along with our county IT group. But to give you an idea what that position is currently managing, it's managing the systems for the primary center, which includes 12 workstations, the backup 911 center, which also includes 12 workstations, over 50 mobile data terminals that are out in the field in the apparatus, and 25 training laptops. And then also manages our run cards, which are the response area cards, our EMD, EFD, EPD updates, which come annually. All of those have to be programmed into each of these computers at both centers. So that's an important position. I want to emphasize that that's a one-man shop there. He's on call 24/7. So we're desperately in need to try to get him some relief and create some depth in that position. The second one is a GIS specialist position. We do not currently have any in-house GIS technicians. We currently work through the planning office and use their GIS techs. With Next Gen 911, our systems are going to become more heavily dependent on GIS mapping, and then the Maryland State Numbers Board is actually recommending consideration for PSAPs to establish an internal GIS position. That would be a grade 9, step 1, $37,365. The next budget is EMS operations. The current.
Real quick, I know we talked about this, but I want to make sure that it's corrected before we move on. On the wages to overtime and the requested, it has the 368 on there, and I know after we've talked, that number should be closer to $300,000.
Yes, and I think emphasize what the CFO said earlier. This does not include those corrections and/or reductions.
So I just want to make sure that it's clarified that this, because of those 4 additional employees, even though last year we budgeted the 356 and we spent the 465, this year our budget should be, and overtime should be a lot lower.
Correct.
We should actually hit those numbers.
And you'll see a reflection, I think, in the second draft of this budget of the same.
Yeah, and if my memory serves me right, I think it was reduced to $325,000.
Yeah, so reoccurring looks like it's $299,
Yeah.
and then we asked for about $25,000 or $30,000 to handle fluctuations in overtime. So I think 325 is going to be the number.
Okay, perfect. And I guess the main point I want to point out, even though last year we did put in for 356, we really spent the last 2 years in overtime 465 and 448 in overtime, and the 4 additional employees is to bring that 448 number down to a more realistic number.
That is correct.
Okay.
And it is also, we've already seen some of the impact of those 4 positions. They were just released to what we would call primary duty about a week or 2 weeks ago. But with those on staff, we're going to be more consistently at full staffing and not relying as much on either overtime scenarios and or a part-time cadre. So we've already seen some of that impact coming in the door.
And the new upgrade for the supervisors, that's coming soon?
Yes, that actually is at HR to be advertised. We're going to do it as a single process. We did the promotion of the training coordinator that came from our supervisor ranks. Rather than run two processes, we're going to run a single process, move both forward at the same time. So that's
The
actually,
majority of the overtime was the supervisor. I'll make sure we get that.
that's correct. Yep.
Since we were provided information that those upgrades were already approved, we have moved those out of the personnel requests as well. So those will be correctly reflected in the next draft that you have.
Thank you.
Okay. EMS operations, our current budget is $2,587,230. Our requested budget is $3,923,490. The bulk of that, I want to emphasize, is the $2 million that has been added for the EMS staffing initiative, which hopefully here in the near future, you're going to get a report and a proposal from the EMS subcommittee that should be endorsed by the Volunteer Fire and Rescue
That includes
Association.
like level funding or adequate.
That's correct. That-
Consistent of.
This is
hourly
the
wage.
second side. You've gotten your fire services staffing plan. This will be the EMS services staffing
And that
plan.
also include health insurance, some
Yes,
health
sir.
care involved in that.
Yes, sir.
Good.
It also includes wage increases of $170,860. Most of that is due to the proposed wage increase countywide, and then also the change from the 2184 work schedule to the 2496, and that's in the terms you may understand a little bit better, the 2472 versus the 2448. There's a wage impact that actually comes on board with that. The operating expenses increased by, again, $2,053,570, and I mentioned earlier that was the $2 million for the most part. That is for the EMS plan. And then capital outlay, you'll see, is budgeted at $111,830, and we're looking to purchase 24 newer AED units, which will replace some older units that require an annual service contract. The benefit to replacing them now is in about 2.5 years, we'll recover the cost of this purchase through savings in that annual maintenance contract. That's about $20,000 a year. The newer units do not require an annual maintenance contract. It also contains the self-contained breathing apparatus. You'll see that, excuse me, repeated throughout all the departments that use that apparatus. All of that apparatus is at end of service life. I want to emphasize that we are going after an AFG grant, which is the sister grant program to the SAFER, to try to encumber the cost for these SCBAs. That's funded, if awarded, at 90%. What you see in some of these budgets is the reflective 10% match on the part of the county. Our next budget is fire operations. Current budget is $1,940,400. The requested budget is $3,016,960. And again, that's wages and benefits that have increased by $793,100, or 49%. And that's due to the proposed increases in wages, related benefits, the addition of the approved 3 full-time firefighter, paramedics, and the volunteer coordinator's position. It also includes wage increases for the change from the 2472 work schedule to the 2448. And then it also requests increases in the overtime to $99,610 to cover any vacation, sick times. And if you remember from the personnel presentation for the fire plan, we did not include additional robust positions in there. So some of those costs are going to be covered by overtime, which we feel in the beginning stages of this plan is the right way to handle that. It's the most efficient way to handle that. There's also $326,470 in here for the 25% match for the SAFER grant. So if that grant comes on board, that money is budgeted. And then that's only requested a half year because we do not expect to hire those staff until at the earliest January 1 of 2021. Capital outlay is $334,400, $255,500 for turnout gear. That's for the new firefighters. It is also for continuation of the volunteer program where we provide PPE to the volunteer stations, and that has been an ongoing program for 4 years. There's $50,000 in there again for breathing apparatus, and as I mentioned earlier, we're looking to try to apply for a grant for that. This number also includes a $100,000 request to increase our part-time budget. We are receiving requests from the volunteer fire stations for county staffing, part-time county staffing, at about 3,200, 3,300 hours a month. And we only have enough budget to cover about 1,400 or 1,500 of that. So we've asked for an additional $100,000 there to better meet those needs. Emergency management, current budget 241,890. The requested is 236,380. That shows a reduction of just over $5,500 or 2.28%. And wages and benefits are decreasing by 6,160 or 3.17%. And it's related to the change in health insurance. Operating expenses only increased by $650, so nothing big in that budget at this point. We do have a request for a position here, emergency planner, and that is at $37,365 to grade 9, step 1. That doesn't include the benefits, but we're proposing that position as grant funded, meaning we would take the entire salary and benefits out of an existing grant that we get that's a renewable each year. So it would not have a net impact to our operating expense as far as the salary.
Dave, just for clarification, this would be additional grant funding over and above what we currently get
That's
in
correct.
that grant.
We currently fund the emergency planning specialist in that group now. $40,000 out of a grant of that salary is already funded. We're projecting to continue that funding, hire an additional person. And one of the reasons we're trying to bring this forward is when we consolidated the 2 assistant director positions last year, communications and emergency management, it has created a pretty significant strain on our ability to maintain the continuity of operation planning, our commodities flow studies, the hazard mitigation plans, tier 2 reporting, all those things from an emergency management side of the house really goes down to 1.5 positions is what's managing that. And actually Director Brown spends a lot of time with the communications center, so it's probably closer represented by a single position. So again, we believe we can fund this out of the grant. We're asking the commissioners to consider our request with that. And the last one, I'll touch on some of the basics, and I'm going to turn it over to President Fishak just to chime in here a little bit. But the current sitting budget is $7,268,750. It's our volunteer fire and rescue programs budget. The requested budget of this year is $7,871,000, an increase of $602,250 or 8.29%. Again, wages and benefits are decreasing by $262,650 or 19.98%, and that's due to the decrease in the required OPEB contribution and lowers workers' comp premiums, which I think you heard several months ago in a presentation. And that goes to some good work by the association and member companies to keep claims low and try to be a safety-conscious environment. The operating expenses are increasing by $859,900 or 14.44%, and that is to the appropriations to the volunteer companies, an increase of $264,300, and the details in your packet of what those changes are. Utilities are estimated to increase by 3%, and an additional $21,000 is included in this budget that was presented in your staffing plan for volunteer-based incentives. The $100,000 LED lighting program from last year's budget should be complete by June 30 this year. Likewise, you see a $100,000 reduction for that in this. And then the Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association is requesting an additional $198,000 for new programs. $118,000 is for term life insurance. $118,000 is for term life insurance policies, and $80,000 for benefits such as tuition and child care. That would be in addition to the volunteer incentives that were brought forward back with the firefighter staffing plan. The volunteer incentives that have been brought forward previously are $161,000 for volunteer incentives, $162,000 for the company, and then $130,000 for fundraising incentives. And then they're also requesting $5,000 for headsets, cooling chairs, and microwave ovens, and I believe that's for the rehab unit. Correct. And I'll turn this over to the president if he wants to add or if he needs any information here to pick up for him.
First of all, thank you for letting me appear here today. I know it's a convenience to allow me to speak, and I appreciate Dave including me in his budget. Just give you a quick synopsis. basically our budget is, as you can see, is not much changed than what it was the prior year. The additionals is looking for some things to help retain our volunteers. If you look at what happened in the past year, we've lost almost 200 volunteers. If you do a snapshot back in that time frame, we were 7 months without a recruitment and retention coordinator. In that time, we only recruited about 26 folks. Since the recruitment and retention coordinator came on board 6 months ago, we've done 85 recruitments. So recruiting is a tool that we use, but we also need to look at how we can retain our volunteers. And so a large portion of that budget is looking at that. Good example to look at what the amount of people we can serve with some retention dollars is when you look at the last year's LoSAP criteria, and I know some of you have concern about the LoSAP criteria, but it's what I have to use to take a look back at this time. Those folks who earned 50 points in 2019, there were 748 folks. Now, out of that 748, there's 646 of those folks who have earned the 50 points for the last 3 years of service in a 10-year time frame. That does not give you the total snapshot of those who are actively putting boots and butts in the seats of the fire trucks, but it gives you a totality of those who are enabling the volunteer fire service to continue, either working in a fundraising capacity, administrative role, and also those who are actively responding to calls. So we need to look for a way to keep those, because without every one of those positions, our volunteer fire service doesn't work. So that's why there's so many dollars looking at in the retention category. So you've heard about some of the ideas for the retention categories, the life insurance for those who qualify with the 50 points given to those folks. The other would be a cafeteria program, if you would call it, of some choices they could take. Maybe we have folks that would want to be volunteers, but they have daycare issues. They can't get to the trainings that are required because they can't afford the daycare. So we could pay for that daycare so that they could go in the evenings and receive that training and then also be an active volunteer. So they're just some of the ideas that we came up with, and that's the reason for the additional funding. Another area of the additional funding is in the needs to pay for some training. We often cannot fill the classes that are put out and offered through the Maryland Fire and Rescue Institute. We have a minimum number that we need to meet. So the association and DES has been taking an active role in trying to fund those classes to move those along. If we don't have 10 people, we can't have a class go, but we may have 9 people signed up to take the class, and we're losing 9 volunteers getting them trained if we cancel that class, and it may be a year before it rolls around again. How do you retain a volunteer if you can't offer him the tools that you're requiring him to meet to ride that fire truck or that EMS unit? A year to ask them to wait is an awful long time to stand there and watch the fire truck leave the doors or the ambulance leave the doors with lights and siren, and that's what they want to do. So that's some of our additional requests and a quick snapshot. So I'd be entertaining any questions for the association.
Any questions for the division?
The 200 firefighters you said that left, what's the reason? Is it age, retirement, injury?
I do not know that answer. That is going to be one of the things I'm going to ask the recruitment and retention coordinator to start working towards. We need to do a better job with doing exit interviews and trying to figure out why they leave. However, I would say we're behind a curve on doing the recruitment part right now. And if you start looking at, you kind of opened up a can of worms there with my comments, but if you start looking at the trends, recruitment and retention really needs to be broken into 2 different areas. It's not a thing that goes hand in hand anymore. They're both severe issues that we have to deal with. And if you start looking at some jurisdictions, they've actually split personnel between those 2 areas. So we've got one individual doing the job of what could possibly be 2. We do have the volunteer coordinator position that has just come on board, and I look forward to the work that's going to happen between those 2 individuals. Hopefully we can identify some of those issues and do a better job at retaining them And, you know, if it's placement issues, maybe we get them placed elsewhere. If it's, you know, maybe it is those issues that we didn't get them the training they need or whatever. So we need to look at what we can do as an exit interview, figure out what's wrong with them, and move forward to keep them here.
Commissioners, any other questions, comments?
If I could just add one last thing, and this is just a carryover from last week. Your question about how many sets of gear we replaced that were expired. Director Hart was out of the office last week, but we're still following up on it. We'll have you that answer.
Commissioners, any other questions? If not, we'll recess to Boonesboro.
Motion to adjourn?
Recess.
Motion to recess.
You got it. Thank you very much.
Motion to
Go to recess.
Motion to leave.
Motion to leave. Motion to go get lunch and then